Hello, welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue in week 10, our remaining part of the course for this semester. We discussed today outsourcing and offshoring before we go to the next session for week 10 of the project management. So, when we say outsourcing and offshoring, which is quite important, important discussion in the operation management of any business. They want to be doing various elements or components or part of the business services in partnership with different other organizations. So outsourcing basically refers to contracting work out to an external organization because outsourcing includes both the foreign and domestic contracting. For that reason, we're going to talk both outsourcing at the same time offshoring, and offshoring includes relocating of the business function that can be to another part of the world, in another country, and then that will be across the border. So we will discuss more in detail what exactly we mean by outsourcing and offshoring and what is the key differences to differentiate outsourcing from offshoring. When we say the operation management chapter about offshoring and outsourcing, we know that there is always a couple of tasks within the organizations in the operation management. There can be a number of operation management activities, certain jobs, processes that could be performed by employees within the organization, but is instead contracted this to a third party for significant period of time, generally but they are known core aspects of the business, and we call them the activities of the operations which is given to third party is basically outsourced. However, when we say offshoring, which is usually offers a cost saving advantage by getting work done in different other countries for a number of reasons, for raw material or labor cost, while outsourcing at the same time refer to process of having work contracted out to a third party or another partner company. It is completely possible to outsource work without having to offshore it. So that can be done within the organization of the partner company in the same country where the head office or the main business is conducting its business activities. But when it goes the outsourced kind of activities other than the country where it has its presence, then it become outsourced in the form of offshoring. So we're going to talk more in detail both outsourcing and offshoring, and then we will see what are the key benefit and why any business need to consider, and how we can differentiate between outsourcing and offshoring. What are the advantages and what are the other fundamental or key disadvantages? So if we look into the key difference, what is outsourcing and what is offshoring, we can see in this slide a very brief comprehensive definition. Outsourcing is basically the business practice of hiring a party outside the company to perform services and create goods that traditionally were performed in-house by the company's own employees and staff. We can also see that, on the other hand, offshoring is the relocation of business process from one country to another, typically an operational process such as manufacturing or supporting process or processes such as marketing, accounting, IT, for example. So some common outsourcing activity include, let's say, human resources management, for example, facilities management, supply chain management, accounts and finance, customer support, particularly technical support, after sales support and services, sales and marketing, computer-aided design, for example, research and development work, design, content writing, engineering, diagnostic services or legal documentation sometime. So there can be range of activities or product which can be done in partnership with other organizations, or sometime they can be relocated or to another country. So we have to see why we are doing it. So the lower operational and labor costs are among the primary reason why companies choose to outsource. So at the same time, when properly executed, it has a defining impact on a company's revenue and its recognition, and they can deliver significant saving. They think about offshoring or outsourcing. Some of the key benefits of the offshoring and outsourcing work processes include a lower cost, focus on business development, attaining flexibility, business expansion at the same time, and again minimizing sometimes the risk, or also exercising to have a kind of a control both in the product range and the expansion for sales and marketing. However, when we look into the metrics that how we can use the combination of outsource with offshoring, we can see in this slide that outsourcing is where a third-party service provider is engaged to provide a service that delivers an outcome under pre-agreed services legal agreement. So the cost is generally linked to a transactions or unit rate, and the client typical is not involved in the process of delivering the service. But when we say offshoring, which is where a company will move or relocate part of its onshore operation offshore, maintaining direct management and control of its operation. If the company does not have a legal entity in the offshore location, it might engage a third-party service provider who is based offshore to provide the legal entity, facility and equipment, and to engage staff to perform the work in that country. The offshoring service can range with the service provider delivery with 0% interest in the performance of the client company operation, commonly called a seat lease, though it can go up to 100% responsibility for performance of the operation as outsourcing. So the outsourcing decision matrix is strategically designed as a plan that aims to help business owner, entrepreneurs, and decision maker to figure out their plan before they finally decide or make a decision for any kind of activity or operations task to be outsourced. So outsourcing is not something we can decide within no time. It cannot be decided with overnight. So that's quite a process, a strategic process. We have to consider a number of components or business elements, that what is more appropriate and how we can make a decision for long term. So when we look into, after differentiating between outsource and understanding what is the offshoring and the combination of both, we look into this matrix here, and you can see in this matrix that outsource and offshore are the two decisions that we have to consider for the operations management improvement, or rather making the optimum use of resources. So outsourcing refers to an organization contracting work out to a third party, while offshoring refers to getting work done in a different country, usually to leverage cost advantage. However, it is possible to outsource work but not offshore it. For example, hiring an outside law firm to review contracts instead of maintaining an in-house staff for lawyers, or similarly for accounts, for example, or for the IT maintenance. So you don't need to have in-house department or resources, which is going to be more time consuming or costly sometime. So it is more preferable to make a contract with third party provider. It is also possible to offshore sometime the work, but not outsource it. For example, a Dell customer service center in India to serve American clients. So they keep all the ownership and the work, but it is done in another country with the resources, maybe again very cost effective. So offshoring outsource is the other one of the possibility which can be practiced for hiring a vendor to do the work offshore, usually to lower the cost and take advantage of the vendor's expertise, economies of scale, and large and scalable labor pool, for example. And we can see in this possibility that what is the possibility of the offshoring and outsourcing and combination of both. So if it is something which can be done domestic and it is owned, the asset is owned by the business, so we call it domestic operation, and that is the focal operation performance activities done by the organization themselves. However, if the asset is owned within the domestic market, then we move, if this is where we have to take a third party in partnership. So this is local again, but the third party will be the provider of certain products to manufacture, design, or provide services. So that will be a domestic supplier delivery for the product and or services. That's outsourcing. That is quite the straightforward example of the domestic partnership, and that's done locally. However, when we cross the border, we go to offshore to another country and do the work done or the services provided, so that the the operations overseas, basically operations deliver product and services, so that's not local anymore. So we're going to another country, that's offshore. And then at the same time, if the asset is not owned by the company, but it is owned by another third party, and they also located in another country, so that grid of the matrix means offshore sourcing, outsourcing rather. So from domestic operation to outsourcing to offshore operation to offshore outsourcing is the 4 possible combination in this matrix, where the organizations can get the contract to let the third party provide certain product or services. It can be within the country, domestic, local, or overseas in other part of the world. So the different types that we can consider for outsourcing is again, outsourcing is a broad concept. It's a broad umbrella term which covers a lot of different types of outsourcing. So there are different types of outsourcing, including the offshore outsource, domestic outsource, and then again we have to think about offshore staffing, onshoring, and project outsourcing. So there are a few examples like professional outsourcing, IT outsourcing, manufacturing, project, process, operation. So we have to see the transfer of the management and the delivery of the process previously performed by the company itself, now to be done by a third party through an agreement or contract. The procurement of selected value adding activities, including the production of the intermediate goods or finished products from independent suppliers, whether local or foreign, is another key type of outsourcing. The 2 main types we can see, either is a business process outsourcing or it is purely manufacturing outsourcing. So again, it is more like the product and service that we have to take on board with partnership with a third party provider. It can be done within the country, or it can be done outside the country. So it is again owned, the asset, by the company, or it is owned by the third party. So that's basically the outsourcing and offshoring. And again, it can be either providing just the business process or also the manufacturing of the complete product to be done by third party, that through outsource. So business process outsourcing is one of the key model. So when we say business process outsourcing, which is the practice of contracting a specific work process or processes sometime to an external service provider. So the service or the services can include number of operation activities. For example, payroll, accounts, marketing, telemarketing, social media, data recording, for example, direct or indirect marketing, customer support, sale and services, etc. So we basically trying to understand that outsourcing of business function such as accounting, human resource function, IT services, and customer service to independent suppliers. We have to use this practice as business process outsource. This also include services for back office activities, including upstream business function such as payroll and billing, or front office activities, including downstream customer relationship services, sales and marketing, or technical support. So business process outsourcing is a method or business model or a practice of subcontracting various business related operations to third party vendors. Although business process outsourcing originally supplied solely to the manufacturing entities such as soft drink manufacturer that outsource large segment of their supply chain. So BPO, business process outsourcing, now applies to outsourcing of services as well, not just only the manufacturing of certain elements or part of the product. Rather, it is also help in the business support services. So broadly speaking, companies adopt business process outsourcing practices or methods in two main areas, the back office and front office operation. So basically they look for the services that can support as a back office support, or sometime they take people on board to work in partnership for front office job. Back office, of course, refers to the company contracting its core business support operations such as accounting, payroll, processing, IT services, even human resources, regulatory compliance, legislation, quality assurance, and insurance, for example. So by contracting the front office tasks, they commonly include even customer direct relationship. They're related to services such as technical support, after sales service, and sales and marketing. The important bit here is that why we use business process outsourcing. So business process outsourcing, they become the third party provider, becomes like business partners, and this company constantly they strive to improve their processes. Different organizations, they want to improve their business operations activities day in day out, and they want to continuously enhance with innovative approaches by adopting the most recent technologies and practices. If they cannot do in-house, so they prefer, and that gonna be quite appropriate to shake hand with the third party, which are very advanced with certain business processes or technology. And that can be the reason, because cost, where you have to do investment in certain new innovative emerging technologies, going to be quite costly. Rather, to do in-house is better to do with the third-party providers they already achieved, and they can be providing these services to a number of other organizations, and that's going to be quite cost-effective for that particular organization to provide in partnership as outsource provider for a number of organizations. So cost can be one of the reasons. So that's why we go for business process outsourcing, and that maybe make the organizations capable to provide the services more cheaply. The second reason can be the flexibility. It enhances the flexibility for the parent organization. So outsource partner may be more readily available to scale services up or down as required. So it can help them to focus what is the core business and how they can concentrate what is more important, and they can prioritize it. So the core competence, a company may decide to focus on its core competencies and outsource all other activities which are of the secondary priority, or which are not, that's the core business of the, or the core element of the business within certain organization. So there are a number of advantages of the business process outsourcings, but there are a number of disadvantages at the same time. So we also looking to the technological advance can be one of the reason that why we use business process outsourcing. So a business that outsources its business processes may be prone to the data breaches or have communication issues that delay project completion. As such, business may underestimate the running cost of the business process outsourcing provider sometime. But again, the technological advances, a company may not have the most up-to-date technology available. This will that's can be the reason. That's why they prefer to outsource to partnership, to go in partnership of third-party providers who do have such technology, and they're quite well in advance with their investment. So the reason for going business process manufacturing, we go for, let's say, manufacturing, the outsourcing of the product or services. Let's say we take the example of manufacturing outsourcing. Here we are not just thinking about the business support outsourcing, rather it is more toward production, which allows the companies to focus on what they do best rather than worry about tasks that are may not be necessary, or they are not essential as a core business product. So outsourcing production sometimes eliminate the need to hire a large staff and source more workspaces. So the outsource or part or all of the manufacturing process can be done to third-party provider, which is going to be cost effective. And sometimes again, we rather enhance the quality. Again, we have to think about both the advantages and disadvantages at the same time of the outsourcing. So we're going to talk more in detail in the next slides. Often the manufacturing outsources include the entire assembly process. Products are designed elsewhere, but the global supply chain coverage on single country and entry assembly process is carried out for that particular product. It requires careful management of supply chain and global sourcing, as well as management of manufacturing process itself. That's very important, because outsourcing production allows the company to focus at one hand on what they do the best, but at the same time, outsourcing production eliminates the need to hire a large number of people as human resources, and sometimes to have a huge space. Outsourced manufacturing consists of hiring people outside of the company to assemble part or build an entire product for the main parent organization or business. The main reason why companies choose to do this is to cut costs. Obviously, labor is often among any company's largest cost. So outsourcing parts of the production line to a third party is a lower cost location, needs to be significant decrease in production cost, and that can be one of the key reasons for choosing to go in partnership for third party provider to minimize the cost. It is more affordable to outsource production processes and manufacturing outsourcing to various companies that have competitive advantage in the area than to produce them internally with certain manufacturing plants or investment required with the technological innovation. So many times, one of the greatest advantage of the outsourcing is to utilize asset, plant, property, and equipment that's already available, or that's in place in practice in the third party provider, rather having to make an investment for fixed cost inside or in-house. So we have to think about the reason for outsourcing, as we discussed earlier. So manufacturing companies have number of reasons that they have to think about outsourcing the manufacturing. They reduce direct, indirect cost, reduce capital cost at the same time. It can be helpful for reduction in their taxation, legislative, sometime investment, or overcome the tariff barrier. It can help to share risk with other companies at the same time. Another advantage can also be because of the sharing the risk and then build alternative supply sources. However, learn from the local suppliers, foreign customer or companies can be one of the advantage, because knowledge sharing, skills, and learning from other overseas partnership or other third-party providers with their skills and competitiveness can be one of the advantage. However, gain access to the world-class capabilities or attract talent globally can be one of the main reason to go for outsource offshoring option for different manufacturing plant to get the best out of the resources which cannot be available locally or in the local market. So we have to see the logistics, the decision about outsourcing, because transportation can be one of, even if it is outsource offshoring, is going to be then the one of the challenge is how to manage end-to-end supply chain management. So outsourcing is when a company decide to purchase a product or service from another company rather than make the product or perform the service itself. Then we have to think about the channelize these services. This is a decision to either we have to make or buy, or we have to outsource the decision. Many companies do outsource different components of the operation tasks, or even their entire product or service to the to another manufacturer or third-party providers. So the important idea is that how do you make a decision? So the first important bit is the activity we have to consider. Is it strategically important activity both in manufacturing or servicetization? Is the answer yes or no? If it is yes, we have to explore keeping the activity in-house rather to share it with third party or any other organization which is going to be in partnership, and then you have a sensitive data or you have a strategic plan to share with outsource provider. So that's very important to see if the activity or the task is strategically important for the organization. If the answer is no, then yes, we can go ahead. But again, we have to consider, there's another question. Does company have specialist knowledge in the area before they have to consider to outsource? If the answer is yes, then we have to do in-house. If the answer is no, then we have to consider to take this task or activity in partnership by third-party provider. But there's one more question to consider. Is the company operation performance superior, and that's a niche market, or that is one of the key advantage, competitive advantage for the organization? If the answer is yes, we have to think and do it in-house. If the answer is no, then we can consider to go in partnership. So is the significant operation performance improvement likely? If the answer is again yes, we have to think about doing in-house. If the answer is no, then obviously that is the point where we have to make a strategic decision, and that strategic decision is to explore outsourcing the activity by a third-party provider. Though we are looking to the cost saving, pricing, technology, ability to meet the deadline, we have to think about the trust, service level agreement, communication, calibration, coordination. All of the important factors need to be considered, but we have to see what are the reason for making a decision, and that is the logic for not just the supply chain logistic, but the main important decision for logic to decide for outsourcing. If the activity, is it strategic importance the activity has for the organization? Do we have enough specialized expertise or knowledge in-house, or we have enough resources available with a superior performance, or this is something very much has a significance for the organization to do in-house? If the answer is no, then we can go straight forward, and that is a logic for making a decision of the outsourcing. However, the benefit of outsourcing at the same time, companies outsource primarily to cut cost, but this is not just one of the key point or reason for making logic decision for outsourcing. It is not only about cutting cost, but also about reaping the benefits of strategic outsourcing, such as accessing skilled expertise, sharing knowledge, reducing overhead, flexible staffing, and again increasing efficiency, effectiveness, productivity, reducing turnover time, and eventually generating more profit, and organizations can become more productive and getting more flexibility. Like any other business venture, proper planning and resource for research is important, which is necessary before choosing any outsource partner. And we have to ask certain questions, as we discussed in the previous slide, for the decision logic for outsourcing. But by outsourcing to a third party, we have to think about the business that can focus on what it does best and gain a competitive advantage for the core area of the business, and get the maximum share in the marketplace. So there can be a number of advantages at the same time, and the key benefit, for example, freeing up of cash, investments can be concentrated on core activities, optimal usage of knowledge, equipments and experience of third party can be an advantage, increased flexibility, as we discussed earlier, fluctuations in the workload can more easily be absorbed when we have the option for outsourcing and that facilities available. So outsourcings again lead to more focused primary processes in the organization, and again help to reduce the risk of short-sightedness within the organization. And you can see this is the tick mark with the options where we can get the key benefit out of outsourcing when we have a logic decision. Talent pool, increase efficiency, reduce cost, operate around the clock, offshore better risk management, and provide flexibility, staffing arrangements, and help to gain customer satisfaction. So this is not just focusing on the one of the reason to minimize the cost, but focus on core tasks, and again promote the growth of the organization, have staff flexibility, and develop staff both in-house for future long-term strategic benefit for the organization. So they're quite important benefits. And then we have certain risks again involved, as we have the advantages. There are some disadvantages when we think about the decision logic for outsourcing. So the key risk in outsourcing can be dependency, that increase the dependency on suppliers, and then continuous flow up and monitoring of the supplier relationship is again mandatory. That can be a big risk. Risk of losing essential strategic knowledge sometime, because you share your core important knowledge and plans with third party, and it can sometimes go to your competitor. Risk of communication and organizational problem during the transfer of activities to a third party can be a risk, as well as a leakage of confidential information. So an arrangement with a supplier has element of risk involved within it. However, risk associated with sourcing internationally are often even higher. Again, there's the risk of quality to compromise, and sometimes to have things of outsource with the substandard services, or quality can be compromised with the product they are manufactured with the sub-quality or substandard product. Intellectual property protection is going to be a big question mark, and then reputation or reputational risk can be one of the elements to be considered. So we have to see what are the outsource key risks, and you can see this graphical illustration. There can be some hidden cost, even lack of control can be one of the key challenge, and time differences, as well as the economic and language barrier for communication and collaboration. So we have to see how the information and as well as the intellectual property protections can be safeguarded when we go for outsourcing as key risks. So when we think about the airline, for example, which of the below is, for example, we think the key article that's by Rittner and Brown 1999. They believe how the airline companies have to adopt themselves using different strategies to give more efficient and effective services to survive in the competitive market today. The outsourced functions include passengers or cargo reservation systems, accounts and traffic management system, for example, operational system, flight operations, crew scheduling, gate operations, ground handling, baggage handling, catering, fleet maintenance and office system, and so many other operation management activities that can be outsourced within the airline or aviation industry. So this article from Rittner and Brown 1999 has very good insight, which is available on week 10. You can see in the workshop folder which of the below is likely to be outsourced by airline: food service, aircraft interior cleaning, pilots, baggages handlers, flight attendants. So that's quite interesting to read that the airline typically outsource a broad range of business processes. So aircraft maintenance, baggage and ground handling, in-flight catering, they may not be provided or performed by the airline itself, and some or all of its reservation, ticketing, even departure control system will be provided or maintained by service provider on behalf of the airline company. So you can see, as in other industry, some IT business function such as finance and accounts or payroll services can also be outsourced within the airline company. So when we see a different example here, and you can see in this slide and the following slide that what are the key reasons for the traditional airline model, that the Delta, for example, the Thai Airways. So you can see that the outsourcing by the airlines maybe include the flight operation such as cargo, ground handling, informatics, revenue accounts, for example. When you take the example of the core airline flight operation, it can also include engineering along with the cargo in-flight catering. So there can be a virtual airline model. For example, EasyJet is one of the examples that airline sources some or most of the functions or services they outsource, and that can be done as a virtual airline. So that's very interesting, that how the organizations can create relationship for long-term and then how they can become more cost effective at the same time when they go for outsourcing. So just take the example of the core airline for aviation business model, where the airlines have a separate business unit that support the passenger core but generate most revenue from external client, for example Lufthansa or Singapore Airline, how they manage things to be done as a core business to focus and give it excellent services and an excellent experience for customer, and then some of the services can be outsourced again to get the best out of the relationship for outsourcing, and they call it ORM, outsourcing relationship management. Can be a failure in outsourcing sometime, and that is one of the reasons that the research shows that 4 out of 5 business process outsourcing the contract signed today will need to be renegotiated within 2 years, and 20% of such contracts will collapse even within that agreement time frame. In recent survey, it was found that 50% of the outsourcing relationship worldwide fail within 5 years time. Hence, outsourcing is a strategic movement, and selecting the outsources is a crucial decision. So how we can create this relationship is more important. Rather, we have to make this short-term relationship for outsourcing provider. So the reason for failure can be number of reasons, and you can see this graphical pie chart. The reason can be communication, commitment, mistakes, errors, quality to compromise, time differences, and there can be a number of other reasons like the reminder frequently, cost realization, for example, and the culture differences can be some of the key reasons for failure of outsourcing. We can also see here that the careful selection of outsourcings coupled with the service level agreement basically require the certification of the provider for quality assurance and also conformance to agreed specification, time, lead time, delivery, and financial capability can be some of the important points to be taken in consideration to avoid failure and outsourcing. So the key factors in shown in this graphical illustration, including the technological competency, staff skills, commitment, and they all are very important for quality assurance, for example, to ensure that they contribute to the success of the for example, if we take the example of IT outsourcing project, so some of these elements are very, very important as a key component for the agreement. If we have any service level agreement for IT services for any business, including aviation, how they can be leading this partnership to lead towards success rather to avoid any failure. If they are missing and these are not available, then of course it's a very valid point that the agreement will not last for long even. So we need to develop a relationship that's going to be logical for decision, long-term strategic objective to achieve. So relationship in outsourcing, we develop ORM as we discussed earlier, which is the business discipline widely adopted by companies and public institutions to manage one or more external service provider as part of any outsourcing strategy. So we have to see 4 stages of collaboration between sourcers and outsourcee. So how to develop the main relationship and what are the key benefits that can be enjoyed. So we have to think about the important stages here as a first master servant stage, consultative stage, peer-to-peer relationship, and competitive stage. To keep communication line open and ensure that businesses and relationship goes clear and regular, there is no gap in communication, and we have to create as well share the plan of action to work in partnership. And again, this is very important to respect the realistic capacity, and we have to be tough but fair with consistent, and we have to have the value boosting behavior in partnership when we go for outsourcing ORM or outsourcing relationship management particularly. So the relationship, when we say master servant stage, you can see between the lines that's a conventional relationship. The customer set the expectations and the rules, and the outsourcee delivery as part of the service legal, for example, the agreement that has to be provided for any kind of business they want to go ahead with their agreement, and that needs to be ensured for the business long-term relationship. Rather, it is just for a short-term, and that can only be achieved if there is no compromise on the agreement for making long-term relationship. Though we know this is the cost to be considered as one of the key factors, but when we look into the second stage rather than master servant stage, we go for consultative stage. The outsourcer consult with the outsourcee on a regular basis. So in addition to the cost, other factors such as quality, reliability, and responsiveness are also important for sustaining the long-term relationship or agreement. And if you go to the third stage, That's more like peer-to-peer relationship stage. That's very ideal stage where the collaboration results in a more synergic long-term relationship, creating win-win situation for both the partners. It's more like a true relationship where you can negotiate and you can look for win-win situation to support the strategic objective and goals. However, the competitive final stage, the organizational original outsourcing company takes the lead role and strategies, or you start to compete with the outsourcing company in global market. So that is quite strategic long term again for the organization's success to lead the market, local and global. So the original outsourcing company takes the lead role and start to compete with the outsourcing company in global market, not in one particular geography. So we are looking here offshoring as the second important part of our discussion today. So outsourcing and offshoring, if the work can be done or the company want to relocate a number of its activities or part of operation out country or another part of the world. So the transfer of the specific business processes to lower cost location in other countries, basically offshoring. It's not the same as outsourcing that we have to ask third party for providing certain product and services. However, the companies can own all the asset and operation, but just they extend or expand itself to go to provide its presence in another country. So outsourcing involves handling process ownership over to third party. In offshoring, company may still own and control the process itself in the lower cost location anywhere in the world. So take the example of from our previous lectures, offshoring for aviation. See 100 plus countries supply chain management, tier 1, tier 2 supply, how many companies they get involved with, direct 8,000 supplier and more than 15 to 20,000 indirect supplier in the aviation industry is one of the key example for outsourcing and offshoring in the matrix of as we discussed in the earlier slide. So why the reasons for offshoring? Again, cost is one of the key reasons organizations want to be more competitive, and they have to decide, is it going to be outsourcing or offshoring or combination of both. Less stringent regular control in some part of the world can be the reason. Lower communication and IT cost can be one of the reason, and then improving capabilities in many offshore region, and then clusters of specific activities, for example call center emerging in certain regions, and that can provide services for different organizations. However, this is again very interesting to see the reasons that can be other than the direct cost, indirect cost, and there can be extra monitoring cost. If we're going to do it with outsource, it's going to also help us for transaction costs at the same time. So a number of benefits of offshoring include the risk can be mitigated, complete assistance, better control, 24/7 support because of the time zone, and that can provide services when you do, let's say, call center services is provided from Asia to America. There is a 9 to 12 hours time difference. So it is excellent service that can be provided non-stop if we have in different part of the world, and that's cheap, and the skilled workforce is available with high quality, and cost can be not just reduced, but also the reduction in taxation and other key benefit. However, there are organizations that think to reverse back their offshoring, and they believe that there is customer complaints, or they compromise on quality, or there can be a number of other reasons, and through feedback and their review and evaluation, and they believe they have to reverse back their decision and bring the part of the operation activities or task back to the parent organization or the country. So there's reshoring, which is the recent trend of returning offshore processes back to home country. For example, BT brought call center back. They brought it back to UK. Motorola shift some phone production to US, and Santander moved call center to UK. This is because labor share of the total cost is shrinking, leading to a changed cost benefit analysis at the same time. Additionally, technology companies have found that keeping research and development and manufacturing close, and they have to help for more innovation when they are doing within the home country, where they can better find out the innovations or future strategic planning can be done within the same organization for its benefit for long term. Reshoring involves a business returning production or operation to the host country that had previously been moved to a different international, let's say, location. However, reshoring is the process of returning the production and manufacturing of goods back to the parent company or the home country. It's also sometimes known as onshoring or inshoring or backshoring. We have a number of examples that, as we discuss here, BT, for example, Santander, they have moved their call center back to UK. Please continue your discussion about outsourcing and offshoring with your thoughts and ideas to the discussion forum for week 10, and read the key chapters from your core and recommended books.